The human brain, a magnificent organ or largely unused potential. You've probably heard that we only use 10% of our brains. Movies, books, and popular culture have often explored this idea. If we could use the other 90% of our brains, would we gain superior powers? Could we move objects with our minds? Could we learn faster, be smarter? But what if we told you that this was just a myth? Where did this myth come from? The origins of this interesting claim date back to the late 19th century. At that time, scientists were trying to understand the functions of different parts of the brain. However, when it was seen that some brain tissue was not associated with certain tasks, these parts were thought to be empty. If we don't know the function of a part, does that mean it is dysfunctional? In the early 20th century, some psychologists put forward various claims about the brain in order to emphasize human potential. These misinterpretations were spread through the media and self-help books. In the 1930s in particular, famous American author Dale Carnegie popularized the idea that we only use a small part of our brains. From that day on, this idea began to be perceived as a scientific fact. So what was the truth? How does the brain really work? Modern science shows that our brains are very active. Functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, and PET scans prove that many areas of our brain are working at all times. For example, what is happening in your brain right now as you watch this documentary? Your eyes are taking in images on the screen, your ears are processing sounds, your memory is being updated with new information, and millions of neurons are sending signals at the same time. If 90% of our brain were not being used, most of these functions would not be possible. The brain is the most energy-consuming organ in our body. It uses about 20% of our total body energy alone. If we only used 10% of our brains, why would we need such high energy consumption? A special neurologist's opinion on this issue: every part of our brain does something. Memory, learning, motor skills, emotions. If 90% of our brains were useless, we would not be such a highly developed organism. Why is this myth so popular? The idea that we only use 10% of our brains makes for an intriguing narrative, especially in cinema and literature. For example, in the 2014 movie Lucy, the main character uses 100% of her brain to gain abilities such as telekinesis, time travel, and extraordinary memory. Similarly, in the movie Limitless, the story is told of a character whose mental capacity is increased exponentially by a special pill. But in the real world, boosting your brain isn't that simple. Because your brain is already working at full capacity. There are ways to use your brain better, of course. But the secret isn't in a magic pill or superpowers. Here are some scientifically proven methods. Learning new things. The brain is constantly evolving with new information. Learning a new language or playing a musical instrument creates new connections between neurons. Exercising. Physical activity delivers more oxygen to the brain, which strengthens memory. Getting enough sleep. The brain organizes and stores information learned during the day during sleep. In conclusion, truth is more impressive than myth. The idea that we only use 10% of our brains may be a fun myth. But science offers us a more impressive truth. Our brain works like a perfect symphony at every moment. So instead of waiting for miraculous solutions to increase your potential, develop healthy habits that will keep your brain active. Because your mental power is much greater than you think. Stay with science.